Yeah, I had no idea why I ran that, but it was on there. I'd never run that before. So
Thanks a lot. I was like, the heck is that? Wait a minute. Is it something that I don't know about? Am I being set up for something?
also, we did start about a minute or so early, so I thought, hey, I
Oh, okay.
haven't run that before. What's that? So, hey, everybody, and welcome
I
to
thought I
Pop
was.
Go the Writers. We weren't here last week, but we're going to blame the weather on that one
Why
because
not?
Jim had some power outages, and mine had also gone out, even though we're on opposite ends of the country.
Yeah,
So
that was kind of weird.
yeah, so we kind of went, that's a sign. Let's take the night off.
Yeah,
So,
going out of business.
but we are back, and we got some fun topics to talk about tonight. Um, how you doing, Jim?
Good. How are you, sir?
I am good. I am good. Been doing my usual stuff. I do want to announce one thing is that I have a new series that I'm working on with Ethereal Comics,
Mhm.
and I am going to be a guest on their show on Friday night. And I think they'll start talking about the project. So we're still looking for an artist. I gave them some names of people I'd like to work with
Mhm.
and some cover artists that I'd like to have, and those kind of pie in the sky hopes type. So I'm looking forward to having that conversation with Dustin over there and April Reyna and a few of the other folks. So that should be
Wait,
fun on Friday.
April Rain,
Reyna, Reyna.
April Rain, uh. I mean, is that really the name? Is it?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
one word.
Oh, okay.
Reyna,
I
Reyna.
thought like like Christmas snow.
No, no. I never even thought about
Rain.
it. I've just known her. Um, I met her, and she's the one that got me hooked up with Ethereal. Um, I had met her in Phoenix. I used to do the Phoenix Comic Con a lot, and I need to get back there. It's been a few years now, but I met her on that and that little local group. Um, and I was driving home with Lisa from one of the weekends, and I had this idea for a children's book. And I kind of told it to Lisa on the ride home, and she's like, "That you should do that." So I came home and I ended up writing in like a day.
Hmm.
And I put on the internet. I said, "Hey, I need an artist for a kids book. Anybody interested?" April jumped in and knocked it out. Just did some great pages, and it's available on Amazon now. It's called the Mysterious Monkey of the Monarch Apartments.
Okay, love the title.
Yeah, it's a fun little book. It was basically about a mother and her two kids who they just recently gone through a divorce. They had to move from a house into an apartment, and them dealing with all the changes in their life, and how this little monkey ended up being part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, so I posted a few weeks ago, or maybe a month or two back, that I was looking for some new writing work. She got a hold of Dustin and said, "Hey, you should get Dan." And then he and I talked. I told him about the project I had in the back burner on my mind, and next thing you know, we're moving forward.
That's
Script's
great.
already done, and
And they have their own regular show that they
yeah, they
do.
do a Friday night show where they get
Oh,
together and
great.
just kind of chat about what's going on, debut new art, stuff like that.
Cool.
So yeah, I've watched it once or twice since hooking up with them, but this will be my first chance to jump in. So
Great.
yeah, so we'll be doing that Friday night. But so what we're going to talk about tonight, we got a couple things we want to talk about. We want to talk about the Flash and the reception it's getting.
Hmm.
We want to talk about the new Stan Lee documentary.
Hmm.
But first, I want to bring up, um, and it's something we were just talking about, is I realized that I am a lot less picky about these movies, these superhero movies and stuff. And I have a theory
Me
about them.
too. Me too.
Yeah, yeah. And my theory is that you and I aren't different in age.
Mm-mm.
So we grew up on the same movies.
Yeah, I would.
The
Sure.
60s Batman.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, for me, when I was a kid, that's all we had, so I liked it. But
Right.
it's campy. It's not the Batman that I wanted. It's the Batman we got, and I liked it because I saw all the characters. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
Superman,
Mm-hmm.
Christopher Reeves.
Mm-hmm.
People love that movie.
Mm-hmm.
I go back and watch it, and it's a little cringy at times.
Okay. Well, it
Okay,
is from the late 70s.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we also had the Incredible Hulk TV show,
Yep. Yes, we
which
did.
couldn't even get his name right.
Right.
We had Spider-Man with the web slingers on the outside
Yes.
with
Yep.
Peter Hammond.
Yep.
We had a Captain America movie that his shield was the windscreen of his motorcycle.
Yeah.
And he wore a
There was
motorcycle helmet. Two of those, yep, I
Captain
remember.
America movies. Yeah.
Yeah, with Reb Brown was
Mm-hmm.
the actor who I actually got to meet at Disneyland one time.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah, he was just in line with me. I'm like, "Aren't you Captain America?" He goes, "Yeah, you're the first person ever recognized me." I went, "Oh my god!" So we lived through all those, and the Roger Corman Fantastic Four, and the Mark Salinger Captain America,
Mhm.
and the fake the Doctor Strange movie, and just we lived through these really lame ass attempts at doing the comics.
Yep. The two DC Justice League or Super Friends live action specials, the
Oh my god,
challenge
yes,
of the superheroes and roast of the superheroes. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, Dan, I always say this a lot. We could not afford to be choosy. In fact, we consumed all that stuff because it was all that we had.
Oh yeah.
And any chance to see a superhero in live action. And we had a lot of animated shows too, for that
Right.
matter. But we really craved seeing them in live action, and you took it.
Oh
you,
yeah.
you know
It's,
and
it's
and you not necessarily liked it. You did, but you just sort of rolled with it because it was what we had. I mean, my head would have exploded if we had all what we have now
oh
back
yeah.
then. My
It's
head
like
exploded as it was, back then.
I remember in elementary school, all the kids in school were excited for Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park.
Yeah, sure.
That's a horrible movie, but we loved it because that was Kiss. That was like, you know. But so when I sit down and I watch these movies, I tend to have a little bit less. I don't expect as much from them. I turn off the critical. I will go into some. If a movie comes out and says this is the greatest thing since sliced toast, I'm going to watch it critically. And there's a lot of movies that have been lauded for being, these wonderful films that I've come out of going,
Sure.
no. But I don't do that with superhero movies. I just kind of turn the critical part off, and I'll pick it apart later. But it's like I enjoyed Quantum Mania,
I did
and I
too.
rewatched it last night with the commentary track on, and listening to Peyton Reed and Jeff Loveness. I think I like the movie even more because of the earnestness in which they made the movie. The decisions they made were made, you understand why they make those choices.
Yeah.
And now, would they have been the same choices I made? Probably not in some cases. In other cases, I went, I like that. Some of the choices they made that I went, I wouldn't, but now that I see what they were thinking, they're bringing certain things back around.
Yeah.
They're focused on this different aspects of characters.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I get it. And I mean, I know a lot of people pan it for the MODOK stuff, but it serves a purpose in the movie.
Yeah.
It gives Kang a connection to the rest of the team other than just Janet, and stuff like that. So I don't know. I guess that's why I'm not as harsh on this stuff. It's like when I get around to seeing The Flash, I'll probably like it.
Yeah. Earlier today, I saw somebody online commenting about Quantum Mania, and they listed a couple things, and then they said, but like I like this and this, but then there's this and this, and all they did was make MODOK completely pathetic. And I said to the screen, not typing it out, although I wanted it to, I said, or did they actually make the character for the first time three-dimensional? You know what I mean? It's like, well, yeah, all we've really had in the comics is just sort of a one, I mean, he's just sort of a one-dimensional bad guy kind of a thing. I mean, they actually tried to make it a character that maybe you feel something about. And yes, he is pretty pathetic, but that's what they chose to do instead of literally just having just another bad guy, one-dimensional, one-note bad guy.
But the thing is that MODOK is pretty pathetic.
Sure, yeah.
We just had the Patton Oswalt animated series, and he was pathetic.
Yeah.
So I don't get where all of a sudden, oh, he should be. No, he's a silly character.
Yeah.
He's a giant floating head with baby arms and baby legs. I love Jack Kirby. I have a special place in my heart for him.
Yes.
But not everything he did was solid gold. He made some pretty weird looking characters.
Yes, he did.
Both for Marvel and DC.
Yes, maybe MODOK, even especially for DC.
Yeah. MODOK and Arnim Zola are not great looking characters. They turned out to be great villains because of the way they were written, but not everything Jack drew was a home run.
Yeah. And it's funny, in the movies they didn't even attempt to do Arnim Zola, this thing with a face in it, where his stomach should be.
As close as they got to it is there's a drawing on the table in his lab.
Yeah. I think they knew better, which surprises me that they went the route of MODOK. That's what he looks like in the comics. But you know what? I mean, they wanted to take a note from the past, Ant-Man's past, and bring it in a new way, bring a character back.
Well, and then the other thing they said, which I thought was absolutely brilliant, is one of the complaints is, well, Kang got beat by Ant-Man. And they point out that Kang is not Thanos.
Yeah.
Kang is a character who regularly got beaten in the comics.
Sure.
But the strength of Kang is his perseverance and his always coming back, never giving up and trying again and trying again. Thanos was all powerful and had the gauntlet. Kang is his own, makes weapons, makes his armor.
Yeah.
So him getting defeated and then coming back stronger and then coming back stronger is the character.
Yeah. And people forget he is just a guy that has, stuff built into his costume and things like that. But there's also this sort of almost like a cliche with Kang, is that a lot of the big Kang stories where you'd get to the point where he would have to fight just as a guy, the Kurt Busiek Kang storyline that he did in Avengers now many years ago, that came down to the point where I think he literally fought Captain America just like it's just two guys fighting, with no real special thing or whatever, and he gets his ass handed to him. So, and I remember when that all went into it, and he and Scott are fighting, and I said, okay, yeah, they're literally just doing exactly what they usually do with Kang, is like his stuff's not working or whatever, and he's a guy, and they're literally just wailing on each other.
There's also a great part in the commentary where they talk about MODOK's hair, and that they actually debated putting a toupee and making it a toupee so they could pay that joke off later, so that he would look more. And I think they should have, because the character looks silly, but at the end where he's dying,
Uh-huh.
that metal bar across his forehead is
Uh-huh.
gone. It's like broken and gone.
Oh,
And the
okay.
character looks a lot better at that point.
Okay.
And I
I think
think
they
it's,
should have done it just because it would have made even more people go even more nuts
oh
about
yeah, but the toupee would go. Or I guess there was also a line that he was supposed to say to Janet. He goes, Miss Van Dyne, we finally meet. And she's supposed to turn and goes, I have no idea who you are. And it's true, because he came around after she was gone.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that they talked about putting in it, but when you watch the commentary, you really get the earnestness in which they did things, and they point out some really important stuff. And I think it's weird with the fan base, and they do this with a lot of movies. I remember the Ben Affleck Daredevil movie,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the big complaints about that was that he let the one guy die on the train tracks.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I watched that and went, okay, this is the character's arc, going from being a vigilante to becoming a hero.
Mm-hmm.
As a vigilante, bad guys die. That's part of it.
Yeah.
A hero gets justice without taking the. So to me, that was part of the story arc.
Yeah.
But a lot of people complained about that because they want these characters to be as they believe they should be the entire time.
Yeah. Yeah.
They don't want to see the characters like Superman in Man of Steel, killing Zod.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, Superman doesn't do that. Well, you saying a young Superman who's fighting his first supervillain ever and doesn't have years of experience to come up with a better way, might have done it early on, realized the angst from it, hates himself for it, and spends his life becoming better and becoming the Superman we want.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I can see other people wouldn't do it that way,
Right.
but that is an interpretation of it without going completely against the character.
Mm-hmm.
So,
see, this is to bring up the Star Wars thing. This is my whole argument about Last Jedi, and it's like I've said, what was done with Luke Skywalker is not necessarily the path that I would have chosen, but I still think it's a valid path, and I don't think it's out of character. It's just not necessarily the one that I would have chosen, the road that I would have gone down. So it's that same thing. And before I forget, Rex Smith is my Daredevil.
Old school, like it. So, hey, Ed.
Hey, Ed.
My problem with the prequel or the sequel trilogy has nothing to do with how they handled Luke Skywalker.
Mm-hmm.
I don't particularly like what they did, but I get it. That's their choice.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yes.
My two biggest complaints about the sequel series, one is that they took away our happy ending for our heroes.
Sure.
That we earned through 3 movies.
Sure.
And they took it away for no apparent reason.
Uh-huh.
They could have done those movies without Luke, Leia, and Han. They didn't have to be in those movies.
Yeah, I think people would have howled then with the actors, and despite what happened with Carrie Fisher, with the actors still being around, I think that there would have been some.
Or they could have done them in smaller roles, not made them, and and the fact is, how do we start off with Han? He and Leia are estranged or divorced, even. Their kid is the bad guy. I don't like any of that.
Okay.
Because they should have just let that be done.
What's interesting about that is that Lucas had a very nebulous idea for 3 more movies. So he also would have had to address the idea of evil rears its head again
Yeah.
and that they don't get their happy ending. So I mean, I guess maybe the solution would have been to just go so far down the timeline that you're not connected with any of the,
Yeah.
those characters, or even their children, for that matter.
There were ways they could have done it without sacrificing the happy ending.
Mm,
And for me, Kylo Ren is one of the worst villains of all time.
I know how you feel. I know how you feel about Kylo Ren.
So, and it's tainted me to Adam Driver.
Oh, what
I
you mean the new Reed Richards?
that supposedly that's not happening now.
Oh, I didn't know it was even close to maybe happening.
Well, they're saying now the contract negotiations have fallen apart with him and Margot Robbie. So
Okay. I I didn't know what to think about any of that. I Again, I don't necessarily like it when they have one of these actors who is so closely associated with another franchise, another superhero franchise, and in fact, the other superhero franchise, and then they draw them over, because really, then you start to, it's Harley Quinn as Sue Richards. You know, I I agreed that she would have looked the part and maybe could have even played the part, but I don't know about these people. I know it's all money, but it's like, why would you want to be stuck in another franchise all over again?
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I asked that same thing with Chris Pratt, as far as, Guardians, and then he's in the Jurassic World movies, and I don't know. I mean, it is all money. I get that.
look at Samuel L. Jackson.
Yeah,
We'll sign
yeah,
up for any of them.
yeah, yeah.
Get a franchise? Let me in it.
Yep. I hear you. So wait,
Harrison
who
Ford. Yeah.
who was the other two people that was rumored along with those two?
An actor who I don't know that well, and then for Ben Grimm, they were actually going to cast David Diggs, who was from Hamilton.
Oh, okay.
So a black American Jewish actor.
I I really question that. It's like, why choose a black actor for a character who is not going to be human for very long in it, and then cover him up, and then have everybody say, "Oh yeah, you have one black actor, and now he's suddenly a big rock guy." You
I
know?
think the reason they were going to go with David Diggs is that he has a very strong and unique voice,
Okay,
and he's Jewish.
okay, I
So
get
those
you.
would be the two
Yeah,
qualifications. It wasn't because they, was or wasn't black. It wasn't I don't think from that point of view,
okay,
they wanted to get a Jewish actor and somebody with a unique voice.
yeah, I got you.
So
And you can't think of who the Johnny Storm guy was, because I
no,
can't.
it was an actor I have not actually seen before,
Okay, okay,
but he was a young guy coming up. So
okay,
all right, let's move on to the Flash.
okay.
Originally, when they first started doing the ticket projections and stuff, it was going to make 140 million easy.
Mhm.
That was the expectations.
In one
And
day.
then yeah, and then as we got closer, now I'm going to talk about these numbers in 3-day weekend, even though Monday's a holiday.
Okay,
So, but these are the 3-day weekend. They dropped expectations down to between 70 and 75 million for the 3-day weekend.
right.
After Thursday night and part of Friday, they went maybe 60 million.
Uh-huh. Yep.
As of today, it's looking at between like 51 and 54 million is what it came in at. This, of course, is a movie that cost over $200 million to make.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's already scrambling to say, well, there's a couple reasons this happened. One of the things they're complaining about is they didn't have the lead actor where they could put them out there and have them do a bunch of press. They were keeping Ezra Miller out of it. because
Okay.
of his legal issues and stuff like that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I get why they would want to, but I don't really get how that would affect box office.
Well, normally the press tour and stuff is big, and that's how people, you and I and everybody else who's on the internet, we
Yeah.
see these trailers, we watch this stuff
No,
because that's our thing.
sure,
But for the
sure.
general populace, they pick up stuff from on the news, or, and this is another thing that they're claiming, a lot of people see these trailers and find out about these movies because the actors end up on Jimmy Kimmel or
Yeah.
Jimmy Fallon, and
Sure.
all of those shows are dark right now because of the writer's strike.
Oh, okay.
So that's why they're saying, well, we didn't have the main actor to put out there anyway, and then we
Okay.
couldn't put Michael Keaton on,
Well,
on
right,
Jimmy
because that's what I
Kimmel.
was gonna say. You've got how many other different people from the movie that you
Right.
can put up there, you know? Huh.
You really only have two, maybe
Okay,
three,
Michael Keaton and Sasha?
and Sasha Cali and maybe Ben Affleck.
Yeah, okay.
But other than, I mean, and none of that. I mean, the star is Ezra Miller.
Yeah.
So, but I don't think that's as a big thing because you look at like Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse didn't have late night TV to premiere on.
Right. See, that's where I'm
Transformers
going
Beast
with this.
Wars or
Yeah. No,
The
I
Little
mean,
Mermaid.
okay, and the general populace would have, I mean, if they hear The Flash, if they
Yeah,
went to if they went to see the other DC movies, they know.
yeah,
Plus, you have that name recognition from the CW show.
yeah. No, no, I agree with you. I think those are BS
So,
responses.
so what is it? Is it is it just timing, or is it literally
I think it's three things.
okay?
I think A, it's the backlash against Ezra Miller.
Okay, uh-huh.
I think that is a factor.
Okay, I pretty much agree with that. Yeah.
I think B, it's this mamby-pamby way that Warner Brothers has been making the transition to the Peter Safran and James Gunn stuff
Mhm.
because they had these four movies still to come out.
Yeah.
They made the change, but they haven't really come out and said, "Oh, this is going to play. This isn't."
Mhm.
It's like if you've seen the movie or you know what the post credit scene is, it's a neat little moment, but there's no way that that is going to lead into the new stuff.
Okay, that was my question. So all I have done is I read the Wikipedia plot description.
Okay.
And what that described as a post-credit scene seemed to be just a little piece of fluff.
Well, see, that's the thing is that they filmed that scene three times
Okay, and I've heard this. I've
with
heard
three
this.
different actors.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Keaton, then Affleck, and then this other character, other actor.
Yeah.
And the Keaton one happened when the plan was for Michael Keaton to become the Batman going forward.
Mm-hmm. Right.
When that fell apart and those people in charge were kicked out.
Right. And he was supposed to be in Batgirl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the change, they got Ben Affleck because they're like, well, we're going to keep Henry Cavill as Superman. We're gonna try to hang on to these actors.
Mm-hmm.
So they brought Affleck in.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when James Gunn and Peter Safran came on, they're like, no, we don't want that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they weren't under contracts for any of those things. It's just the interim team went, no, we'll do this, and then it's like, no, we won't do that.
Yeah.
So they replaced it again with this other, more of an Easter egg thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, had they been on top of it and had the new Batman cast, the Batman for the Brave and the Bold, and had that actor at the ending, that would then suddenly make, oh, okay, so some of this stuff is going to stay. Yeah. But when you bring up this character that there's this actor that there's no way in hell he's the new Batman going forward.
Mm-hmm.
The big thing everybody's talking about is, well, Batman's going to be older than Superman. And it's like, okay, what James Gunn actually said is that Batman's going to be a little older than Superman.
Mm-hmm.
And he wanted Superman to be in his late 20s,
Mm-hmm.
which would mean Batman's probably in his early 30s, maybe mid 30s.
As he probably should be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not a 62-year-old actor who has already come out and talked about how much he hated playing the character in the first place.
Wow. I thought he was older than that. Wow.
Nope, 62.
Wow, he's not that much older than me.
Oh, Ed, you saw the movie and didn't see the post-credit scene? Oh, interesting.
And you know what's funny is Wikipedia describes something else, actually. So I don't know. Maybe is there two? Is there a post and mid?
I don't know, Ed. No, he didn't say. I only know of the one.
Okay, I'm looking at it really quick.
What's
Yeah,
the other one?
okay. It lists something different. It says in a post-credit scene, blah blah blah, which is different from what you're talking about.
All right, hang on a second. We're going to put some spoilers up,
I was gonna say, put that old spoiler thing up
which we
there.
should be okay because Ed's already seen the movie.
Okay. All right. It says in a post-credit scene, Barry tells a drunken Arthur Curry about his experiences traveling the multiverse.
Oh, okay. I've heard about that too.
Okay.
So maybe
That's
there is
called
two.
a post-credit scene.
Okay, so maybe there is two.
You're talking about George Clooney.
Yes.
Okay, so I didn't know where that occurred in the movie. So it's in post credits.
That's what I'm told. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's interesting. I wonder, how that all works.
Aquaman, Ed. Arthur Curry is Aquaman. So is Jason Momoa's character.
Yeah, yeah.
But so, and I think that's part of the problem is that we still don't know what's going to happen to the Snyderverse characters or the DCEU characters. Plus, we've got Blue Beetle coming out, and James Gunn has already come out and said, well, Blue Beetle is going to be one of the the characters in the new universe, but the first movie is going to be Superman Legacy. So,
Yeah.
and then what's going on with, no, it was at the end of the movie that wasn't a post. Oh, so Clooney wasn't was at the end, but it wasn't the post credit. Okay,
I get you. Okay.
Okay,
Two things. It seems to me that this is like them saying this is the end of the DCEU.
Right, which is what they're supposed to be doing. Yeah,
literally, like it's done, and but we still have these two other movies. Although what you're saying about Blue Beetle is, I don't think I've heard that before. We still have an Aquaman movie.
James Gunn was recently on the Inside of You podcast, which is hosted by Michael Rosenbaum, the guy that played Lex Luthor on Smallville.
Yeah,
and they're old friends. I mean, Rosenbaum played Martinex in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies.
Right.
Well, he said on the show that Blue Beetle is a character in the new DCU, or will be part of the DCU. It's the first character, but the first film is going to be Superman Legacy.
Okay. I don't think I had heard that thing about that Blue Beetle was going to be part of the DCU.
Yeah.
That's my other point. Blue Beetle is going to die a horrible death, and I'm talking about the movie. If this is what's going on with this Flash movie, ain't nobody gonna know anything about out there in the greater world. They're gonna hear Blue Beetle, and they're gonna say, "What?"
I think actually, I don't think so.
Okay.
Because my third reason why I don't think the Flash did well is that this is the 5th multiverse movie in 2 years. Spider-Man: No Way Home.
Mm-hmm.
Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness,
Mm-hmm.
Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse,
Yeah.
and then Everything Everywhere All at Once. All of these things have done multiverse. And
Yeah.
now the Flash. Now, even though the Flash was supposed to come out in 2018, he
Yeah.
got bumped and bumped and bumped and bumped and bumped.
Yeah.
Um,
2018. What? I mean, what?
yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Whew.
So I think that's part of the problem is that we've been doing so much on multiverse that I think people are burned out.
It's multiverse fatigue.
Right. Now, the reason I think Blue Beetle will stay away from that
Mm-hmm.
is number one is that it's not one of the Snyderverse characters.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the stink of Black Adam attached to it.
Yeah. Okay.
It's kind of its own new thing, and it's a low budget movie.
Yeah.
This movie was made to go on HBO Max. It was done with the I think it was the 70 million budget, the same as Batgirl, but they were able to spend. I don't think they spent as much as they did on Batgirl. And when Safran and Gunn looked at it, they went, "We can put this in the theater."
Oh, I mean, they are. It's no longer HBO Max.
No, this is going to be in the theater.
Okay.
So it's a lower budget, means its turnaround. It could do 40 or 50 and be considered a success.
But I'm just, again, I guess I'm referring to public perception beyond the internet world, and I think people are literally just going to. I mean, I saw that trailer and I wasn't impressed in the slightest.
But a lot of people
that's
were.
not my Blue Beetle either, for that matter.
Yeah, but Dan Garrett hasn't been Blue Beetle in a long time.
Ted Kord, what did Dan Garrett? Although I'll give you credit for saying Dan Garrett, but Ted Kord, come on, jeez.
Hey, Ted Kord's in the movie.
I heard, yeah.
And there's references to Dan Garrett. His costume's in the movie.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. So the legacy of the Blue Beetle is.
Oh, don't we see something like the Bug? Ted Kord's Bug in? Okay, okay, all right.
Yeah, they're in Ted Kord's lab.
Well, I got to go see that then.
Yeah, it's Owlman's or Night Owl's bug.
Yes, it is. Yes, yeah, right.
Yeah. So I think a lot of the problem with the Flash is that they're pushing this stuff out, and I think it's going to be a similar problem with Aquaman. I don't think it'll affect Blue Beetle as much.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't cost as much. The expectations aren't there. I think as long as it does decent, that's all people are going to care about. Was it Ed saying? I thought what they did with Flash was too similar to Doctor Strange What If episode. Yeah, I agree. So, all right, let's go.
I haven't seen it, but I'm not happy about what I've heard about the little cameos by people who are now dead.
Yeah,
people from the past. And then I heard there was all this stuff that was supposed to be in it, and then they didn't do that. Then there was all the stuff that they filmed and then cut that out. Like, supposedly Henry Cavill actually filmed something for this.
Oh yeah, I'm sure there's going to be like a director's cut, and that it's going to have everything in it, and it'll be like a 4-hour movie, and then they'll do a black and white version.
Oh, but let's see, Gal Gadot is in it though.
Yeah.
Okay, right?
Yeah, and I think the important thing to come out of it is that Andy Muschietti, the director, and his wife, sister Barbara, have now been chosen to direct Batman: Brave and the Bold. So they did like what he did.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and if you look at the reception, Rotten Tomatoes score, critics score is a 67, which is still certified fresh. Right. And normally critics don't like big multiverse movies.
Yes, exactly.
Audience score is like 85%.
Mm-hmm.
So, you hear a lot of negativity online, but the actual thing, it doesn't seem to be doing that bad. It's just people aren't going to the box office.
Yeah.
This may be one that pops up on HBO Max and people go, "Oh, this wasn't bad." But the fact that Muschietti is going to be directing Brave and the Bold tells me that, this is probably going to get, a little love afterwards.
What does Father's Day weekend usually do for movies that are released?
It usually does okay.
I would think that would be good for movies. Like,
Right.
Hey, you and your dad are going to go out to see a movie.
And they're expecting another 9 million for Monday because of the Juneteenth holiday.
Yeah.
This being the first time it's a federal holiday.
Right.
Yeah.
But
right.
Cyborg is not in the movie. I'm just right.
We're gonna move on.
Okay.
I love seeing George Reeves again, but it felt so out of place. He was even black and white, which was bizarre. Yeah, I haven't had a chance to sit down and watch the movie, but yeah, I'm not sure about those kind of scenes. Teddy Sears, who's from the Flash TV show, was never notified that he was going to appear in the movie as Jay Garrick, which is really weird because he posed as Jay Garrick on the Flash TV show.
Wait.
But he was actually Zoom.
Yeah, wait a minute. Teddy Sears is not Jay Garrick. It's
John Wesley Shipp.
Yeah, what?
Yep. So,
do you happen to know, real quick? Do you know how I've heard the cameos of the old people are CGI? I don't understand. So it's not a clip from the actual stuff.
Well, no, some are clips, but like this, one of the CGI puts Christopher Reeves and Helen Slater together.
Okay.
Or there's actually footage of Nicolas Cage as Superman fighting a giant spider.
I heard that, but that was that's new then. That that's because there are no clips from that because it was never made.
Right. There's some test footage of him in the costume, and that's it.
Okay. I read somewhere that they had to de-age Nicolas Cage, which made me think that they filmed something new of him now.
They might have brought him in to film the scene, de-aged it to where he was at that time.
Okay.
I don't know. But
now, I admit that's kind of funny. I mean, that's humorous. Okay, but what I really want to know is how did they use Adam West so that I can be even more mad about it?
Yeah, I don't know. That one I don't know.
Whether it was a clip or they somehow animated him or...
Yeah.
I heard that the intention was to have Linda Carter, Wonder Woman, in there, and maybe a couple other ones, and I can't remember who that was, but I remember that Linda... I wonder what happened to that. I'm assuming he's probably running through the Speed Force and he just sees these little bursts of things. Okay.
Yeah, which they've done on the TV show, and they did it better on the TV show. From what
right. Yeah. Whoop-de-doody-doo. Jeez.
He says you don't even see Adam West; you just see the outfit.
Oh, what's the point? What is the point?
We're going to move on to our other topic.
Okay.
So the other thing is there's a new documentary on Stan Lee on Disney Plus. And I use the term documentary loosely because a documentary to me is somebody goes out, they put together, they do interviews, stuff like that.
Right.
There's a couple interviews, there's a couple sound bites from other people at the end.
Yeah.
But overall, this seems to be like a combination of 2 or 3 different recordings of Stan Lee from over the years, with him telling the creation of different characters and his life story. Okay. It's really just that. It's an animation, and they use clips, they use photos, and then they actually have these little animated scenes they do. It's an entertaining hour and a half, but it is not, nor is it presented as a be-all and end-all definitive origin of Marvel Comics. It is if you took Stan Lee's biography and just brought it to,
Sure.
made a movie out of it.
You're getting one perspective,
Yeah.
basically. And
And of
people
course,
who aren't really in the know will consider that to be the gospel,
yeah.
truth. Yeah.
And of course, Neil Kirby, the son of Jack Kirby,
Mm-hmm.
has come out against it,
Mm-hmm.
which brings up the debate of who gets credit for what.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to me when this debate comes up because it really centers around three people: Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, and Steve Ditko. There were other people that worked for the company.
Mm-hmm.
Bill Everett
Mm-hmm.
co-created Daredevil,
Mm-hmm.
and Namor. There's other characters and stuff that different people worked on, and later on down the line.
Mm-hmm.
But the real debate comes down between Stan and Jack and Steve.
Yes.
And they're also the ones who helped start the company, make some of the biggest characters,
Mm-hmm.
and then left the company. Because you look at somebody like the late John Romita, who just passed away this last week.
Mm-hmm.
He never left Marvel.
Right.
He stayed his entire career.
Yep.
Well, no, he's went to DC for a while and did a bunch of romance books before superheroes even took off.
Right.
Came
Right.
back to Marvel and was there for the entire superhero thing.
Right.
So there wasn't a falling out. Now, Stan was the nephew of the publisher.
Mm-hmm.
Stan was also a human hype machine.
Mm-hmm.
So, with the publisher's blessing or at the publisher's urgence, he was the face of the company.
Absolutely.
Now, Jack was not good at self-promotion.
Mm-hmm.
You see that that's brought up in not only these kind of stories, but in the biographies about Jack Kirby. He
Right.
wasn't. He was a workhorse.
That's right.
And he didn't really confront Stan about any of this stuff that much.
No.
He just worried about putting, get the pages done, get the paycheck, get the paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
That was his attitude. And then Ditko was not only, he almost seems like an introvert. He became a recluse in his older age.
Mm-hmm.
Jonathan Ross and Neil Gaiman did a documentary about finding Ditko. They actually found where his office was. They went there,
right.
And where he let them in and talked to them, he wouldn't let cameras in.
Right.
There are no photos of the guy other than a couple early photos.
Right. His whole philosophy was that the work should speak for itself. That
Right.
he did not need to say anything or go into a whole big thing and make it about him. He felt it was the work. The work, here it is. It's on the page. It's published. This is what it is, and you talk, and you don't make. And in some ways, I almost agree with him that you don't, make a superstar out of the person.
Right.
It's the work that should always be the focus.
Right. But I think Stan's approach is what made Marvel successful.
It's yes. Yes. And I've said it. Say what you will about the guy. If he wasn't the way he was, and if he didn't do the things that he did, we wouldn't have the Marvel comics that we have today. Right. It wouldn't have that flavor. It may have literally just gone down the tubes, but it was the little engine that could, against the giant of national later DC Comics.
Mm-hmm.
And all the kids back then now have told us that they looked at Marvel as a completely different thing. The voice was different, and what it was saying to them. And that voice, for better or for worse, folks, was Stan Lee. you know.
One of the things that comes up in the documentary, which I found absolutely fascinating, is there's a moment where there's a talk show, and on this panel are four people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure who all the people there's just an everyday collector guy.
Mm-hmm.
There's Stanley, I believe Carmine Infantino,
Hmm.
and Julia Schwartz.
Wow, I need to watch this then.
And there is a moment that I think defines why Marvel took over as the best-selling company.
Mm-hmm.
Stan talks about how when he started, he decided that and suggested that they write towards like a college level
Yeah.
thing. And
Yep.
his attitude was if younger readers had to ask a question about something or look something up, that wasn't a bad thing.
Exactly.
And Julia Schwartz specifically came out and said, we have found that our readers don't want to be educated, they just want to be entertained. And that
Hmm.
he was against doing that, to writing for a higher level. I mean,
Hmm.
you see it in this clip. And then the comic collector guy pipes in there and he says, and that's why I cannot recommend Superman, Batman, and your other characters to anybody over the age of 12
Hmm.
because there's nothing in there for them.
Hmm.
And right there, it's like there's an encapsulation of how the thing shifted.
Yeah.
And I look back at those old books, and one of the things I always realized is comics started growing up with my generation,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and
Yeah.
then DC caught on, and I think a lot of it is when Julia Schwartz left DC.
Yeah.
Suddenly, Crisis on Infinite Earths, the Dark Knight Returns,
Mm-hmm.
John Byrne doing Man of Steel.
Mm-hmm.
These more mature stories came
Yes.
up, and suddenly DC was getting darker. They were Death of Superman,
Yeah.
Bane breaking Batman's back. So you could see this kind of shift. But I thought that was a fascinating part of the documentary.
It's, speaking from my own perspective, I started getting my own comics around the end of 1972 going into 73, where my dad was buying me comics. There were some comics sitting around the house and they were mostly deceased things. And we went to this one drugstore a lot, and it had a spinner rack. It had the spinner rack, the Hey Kids comic spinner rack. And I would stand in front of it myself and just, kind of go through it. My dad maybe had already, bought me some DCs and things like that. But I remember so clearly that here was all these Marvel comics on there. And he didn't get me as many Marvels as he did DC, because I think even then my dad saw the difference between the two. But I remember looking at them, and there was a lot of like non superhero stuff or fringy superhero stuff. And my feeling was, I'm looking at stuff that I'm not supposed to be looking at. This is a very, very clear memory in my head. It
Yeah.
was almost like, like I needed to look over my shoulder to make sure that my dad wasn't seeing me look at, and I'm trying, Werewolf by Night, or something like that. Son of Satan. you know and these sorts of things, and it was almost like there was an illicit thrill about
Mhm.
going past those and like wanting to pick it up, because maybe there was something that I wasn't supposed to see in there. It was like a really adult stuff. So yeah, there was absolutely that vibe going on there. That's interesting that you say that about that's like when it grew up. And you kind of have to add for better or for worse, because there have been days over the years of me being a comic book reader and collector where I almost look at it as a sad thing that comics grew up, because we got to the point where I think we take it too seriously and it becomes pretentious then,
Yeah.
where sometimes I feel like maybe they never were meant to be anything more than basically children's material. But then again, would the industry still be around if Marvel had never, made it grow up? I don't know. Maybe not.
Yeah. I don't think they would be, but
But again, that's really Stan. That's Stan being out there, being the face, being that voice on the letters pages and Stan's soapbox and all of it. And you know what? He did. He got to a moment where he started to believe his own hype.
yeah,
He started to believe the things that he was basically making up about himself, and it's very unfortunate. Later in life, he did actually come out and say that he regretted things that he did and said in the past, and that people who did a lot of work and was a big part of it probably got hurt, that it was detrimental to them. He for whatever reason, he and Steve broke it off way early on. He and Jack lasted, a lot longer, but
well, there was a difference from what I understand. The difference between Steve and Jack is that Steve had a belief.
mm-hmm.
He was a very he was a follower of Ayn Rand.
It's objectivism.
Objectivism.
Mm-hmm.
And he would write that into the comics.
Mm-hmm.
And as Stan would say, he would get these scripts and Steve would put in the notes, well, Peter is saying, telling these hippie kids, get out of here, go get jobs and all this stuff. And Stan was like, no, and Stan would rewrite it.
Yeah.
And that was where the falling out happened, is because Steve had a specific belief. And you can see that later on in some of his creations. Hawk and Dove, Mr. A, The Question. Mr. A is probably the quintessential example of his political beliefs or his world beliefs.
Yeah.
Jack loved telling stories the same way Stan did.
Mm-hmm.
And he was being treated well. He was getting his money. But he was also, there was a lot of stuff going on with not getting the art pages returned, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So when DC finally offered him more money and a chance to do that stuff, he went. But for Jack, it was always about paying the bills.
Yeah, because he had a family. And I don't, as far as I know, Steve Ditko never had a family. Like he was not married and had children that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I'm not aware of that either. I know there's some photos that showed up online a couple years ago of him with his family, but I think it was his siblings, kids.
Yes, there's a nephew these days that kind of speaks for him now, but as far as I know, right. When I look at Jack, one of the very first things I think of is Family Man. Mm-hmm. Jack was a family man through and through, and he believed in the idea of that he was the breadwinner and that he was going to keep going on, no matter what, because that's what he did. He provided for his family. That was how he was brought up, and Steve had those beliefs. And maybe not as much of a concern about having consistent pay coming through, and it got to a point where the beliefs overrided everything.
Because
it took Jack a lot longer to get to that point.
Yeah, because Steve stopped working for companies when they wouldn't let him tell the stories he wanted to tell.
Yeah.
Where Jack had to pay the bills.
Yep.
So he stayed at Marvel until, DC gave him a better offer. Then when he went to DC and it didn't turn out to be better, he went back to Marvel.
Yeah.
So
it was such a strange thing that DC wanted him because he was Jack Kirby, but then when he got there, they wouldn't allow him to be Jack Kirby.
Yeah.
It's just it's the strangest thing in the world that I
Yeah.
think that they just, well, I say they, but it was really Carmine Infantino. He wanted that name. He
Mhm.
wanted that name, Kirby at DC. But when they started to see the things that Kirby wanted to do, and then he
How
couldn't
much
roll with it.
how much of it was Infantino? How much do you think it was Schwartz?
I haven't really ever heard that it was much to do with Schwartz. You know, it's funny. Jack was actually like editing his own stuff there. That was part of
Mhm.
the agreement. I think it was Carmine. I mean, Carmine was the be all and end all, and he was the one that killed it. There's a lot of arguments out there that because Carmine said that what it came down to at the end of the day was the sales were not there. There's some
Yeah.
arguments that said that the way sales were seen at that time, that there was no way that Carmine could have gotten accurate sales data back, but before he canceled it, that there was something else going on there, something of a personality clash,
Yeah.
or he just, suddenly decided he had made a bad decision for one reason or another. But I don't know what to say about that. I mean, I've read a lot of technical things about this is the way they got sales back to them in those days, and there's no way he could have had any kind of trail of sales by the time we know that he canceled the Fourth
Yeah.
World, books.
Yeah. But see, I look at the Fourth World books. See, Fourth World books to me, and characters like the Question and Hawk and Dove, they're for me the evidence that it was a balance
Mm,
of Stan and Jack or Stan and Steve.
yep, I agree.
Because Jack came up with so many great ideas.
Yeah.
And he continued to come up with these great ideas. But the difference is we talk about the 100 issue run between it was Stan and Jack on Fantastic Four
Mm-hmm.
as being some of the best comics ever made.
Yeah.
We talk about Steve and Stan Spider-Man run.
Mm-hmm.
There is no equivalent of Jack by himself or Jack with anybody else. Even Jack and Joe Simon in the early days,
That's what I was going to say. There is that in the
they're,
early
they're,
days.
but it's the stories aren't applauded. It's some of the creation and how much they put out.
Yeah, and it is also the time in which they were doing it. There was no call for anything but these are kids' stories. Let's get them out
Yeah,
quick, sort of thing. I mean, but that was an amazing team, but still very different from
yeah,
Stan and
yeah,
Jack. I've often considered Jack a genius, and by that I mean a literal genius. And I found over the years that geniuses tend to be somewhat socially crippled, that they're a genius in what they do, but past that, um, I got to this by reading interviews with Jack, and he was a very difficult man to follow his train of thought when
yeah,
he was trying to explain something. He could explain things through his drawing board, but man, he was really hard to follow. And that's when I got to the point where I said he must have been a genius. They used to call that an idiot savant, where you're brilliant in this one thing, and then everything else you're fairly crippled
yeah,
otherwise. And again, he needed another person there who, and you know what? It's funny because Joe Simon was the face of Simon and Kirby. He
yep,
was the businessman, and he was the, more or less go-getter. He was the one out there getting them work,
yeah,
and then yeah, you have, but yeah, when you get to DC, there's no other person. And I think it's probably because Jack just said, I don't want to work with anybody in that capacity
yeah.
anymore. So, in that
Let's
sense, he was his own worst enemy.
take take two beloved characters: Silver Surfer for Jack,
Yeah.
Spider-Man for Steve.
Yeah.
do people love Silver Surfer because of the look, or is it the look and the angst and the humanity he brought out?
Yeah.
Is it is it just Jack's artwork, or is it the combination of what Stan brought to it?
Mm-hmm.
Spider-Man, would Spider-Man be as popular if Steve wrote him the way he wanted to, where, or was it Stan bringing in the humor and the real life problems and stuff?
Yeah. Yeah, under Steve, it would. I don't think it would have been a soap opera, and Stan, was very truthful when he said at some point, the Spider-Man strip is a soap opera, and that's so the case. I don't know, visually, Spider-Man is terribly exciting. It's still, to me, one of the very best costumes ever designed ever. And then, yeah, you get the Silver Surfer, and it's basically just a guy that's all silver, and it's kind of a silly image. He's riding a surfboard,
Mhm.
you know. I love the idea that he's the herald of Galactus, and that's totally Jack, because he
Yeah,
explained it like, well, you get a guy like Galactus, you gotta have somebody out front, announcing him as he's coming along.
yeah. So Jack's Galactus and Stan is the Silver Surfer. So, yeah. So
Love it.
for me, then I think the argument then comes down to, well, who gets credit for creating it? You know,
Well,
and then it gets lost in history.
yeah.
Did Stan come to Jack going, "Hey, I got this idea. We'll do this family of characters," or did Jack come to him and say, "Oh, well, you want to do a superhero book? What about?" And you see the similarities of the challenges of the unknown,
Mm-hmm.
which Jack co-created.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you look at those two groups, Fantastic Four and the Challenges of the Unknown. One of them is 1,000 times more popular than the other.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So
I know it's probably too easy of a way to do it, but I do think that these days it's basically who was the first writer and who was the first artist. Character first appears, who was writing it, who was drawing it, those are the creators. And I
right.
know that, I mean, that doesn't always 100% work. And you know what? John Romita Sr. is a really great example of that. He actually designed the look of the Punisher, but he wasn't, the first. He wasn't the first guy in the first
Yeah.
issue that the Punisher appeared in, but he probably deserves partial credit because he
And he's
designed the
starting to
costume.
get that on some of these characters
Mm,
because he was the art director for a lot of those years.
yeah,
So the designs of these characters went through him.
yeah,
From what I understand, Jerry Conway was the first one that drew, that he basically walked in with a drawing, and it
okay,
just had a little skull on the chest. And John Romita Sr. was the one that went, no, no, we got to go bigger and put the belt on there. And
yeah, yeah.
so,
I think John Romita. Am I wrong? Did he design Wolverine also?
yes, he was part of, yeah,
Yeah,
he gets credit for designing Wolverine, or
yeah,
partially designing Wolverine. So that
yeah.
was his job as the art director.
Right.
So, okay, we went a
Right.
little long.
Yeah. And it's fun. And as far as Carmine Infantino goes, I mean, he was also, the art director there, and he's considered a co-creator of the Flash, obviously, and then Batgirl, which he actually took that to court because he was there, in the beginning
Yeah.
of Batgirl, and had a part in. I know, you know what? Really, all this stuff comes down to none of us were actually there at that moment of
Look at
the
look at
spark of creation.
look at Marvel started giving credit to Kirby and Ditko and stuff pretty early on compared to, look how long Bill Finger had to
Yeah,
fight to
yeah,
get credit on Batman.
yep, yep.
That's like within the last 10 years.
Yes, it's only now that it
Yeah.
says Bob Kane with Bill Finger.
Yep. So, um, You off one day this week?
I'm off 2 days this coming week.
You want to come on my regular show and continue this conversation?
What day of the week is that?
Tuesday at 2 p.m. my time.
I will be out of town. Oh, that hurt. I really would like to. I will be out of town on Tuesday. I'm sorry.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I want to talk more about this.
That would be great. Yeah, it would, because I do actually really enjoy this topic, even though it gets sad because I love both those men dearly, and I mean I like Steve well enough, but sometimes he sounds like he was a jerk.
Yeah.
But I love Stan and I love Jack, and it's a tough one for me because I come down equally for both of them.
I'm the same. I'm in this industry because I met Jack Kirby when I was 11.
Wow.
And Stan's writing and stuff, and then getting to meet Stan when I was older, and getting to tell him the story about meeting Jack.
Yeah.
And just seeing Stan listening and tearing up a little bit as I told the story.
Wow.
So.
Wow.
All right. Well, I will be talking about this at one point this week. So if you want to continue the story.
Okay. If for some screwball reason I'm actually back, by then I'll contact you. Yeah. But I don't think I'm going to be back by 2. Oh, wait a minute. 2 what time?
Pacific time.
Oh.
What are you? Are you Eastern?
That's 5 for me.
Yeah, it's 5 o'clock Eastern.
Oh. No, I'll be back by 5. See, I forget. I'm taking out a pen to write myself a note. Yeah, I should be back by 5.
Okay. Then we'll continue this conversation on Tuesday. Me, you, and Jay, who will be the producer on the show.
Okay. All right, I wrote myself a note. What am I thinking of? Yeah, you're way off on that other planet.
Yeah, I'm in the past. So
yes.
It's like it's still late here, and it's only just after 7.
Okay. And then next Sunday we'll have Secret Invasion to talk about.
That's right, Secret Invasion. Looking forward to that.
Yeah, I am too. Just to have a new Marvel show is what I want.
Yeah, no kidding. So
yeah.
All right, guys, we got to wrap it up there. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for all the thumbs ups, and we got a hug from somebody. That's nice.
Aww.
Yep. So thank you all for that, and stick around. Well, nope. There's nobody on after this. I'll see you guys on Tuesday for continue. Jim and I will be there continuing this topic. So have a great night, and we'll see you next week. Now I got to click the buttons to make this go away. Bye-bye.